A year ago, I was in a full-time 9 to 5 job, staring at my screen each day, feeling pretty unmotivated and stuck. I was excited by the idea of starting my own design business, but every time I thought about it, doubts would flood my mind. Maybe you can relate. Now, about a year later, I can honestly say that going freelance and starting my own business was one of the best professional decisions I've ever made. But a lot happened between then and now, and that's exactly what I want to give you a behind the scenes look into today. So, what made me finally decide to quit, where I found those first big clients, and a few unexpected things I learned along the way. So, if you have thought about making the leap, or if you're in that transition yourself, then this video is for you. Back when I was full-time, even though I didn't hate my job, there was a few things that I could not stop thinking about. So, what it would feel like to be truly independent, to control what I worked on, and to choose my goals rather than having them imposed on me. Talking to others about this, I remember people empathizing, but ultimately encouraging me to stick to the security of full time. So, my family, most of my friends, and that's what I tried to do. For months, I settled for freelance projects on the side, which by chance ended up being mostly websites. That seems to be the thing that everyone needed design help with. And each of those projects brought me closer to this realization that websites really combined so many different areas of design that I loved. I don't know about you, but I was always kind of sold this idea that in design, the techie UX path and the traditional, more creative design path were pretty separate and exclusive from one another. But my website projects kept proving otherwise. During this time, I was also getting my hands on all of the online learning material that I could. So this was when I discovered Flux Academy. I was blown away by how much valuable content other designers were sharing. And the late nights that I spent just devouring YouTube content slowly built up my knowledge and my confidence. And one day, I just decided, life is short. I would rather try this and fail than continue on the comfy full-time path that was slowly draining my excitement about work. So I quit. I had one project lined up and a few months of savings, but that's it. So then what? I had tons of new knowledge, a basic portfolio, a lot of determination, but all freelancers know that our success ultimately depends on our ability to get clients consistently. So, what I did and what I generally recommend to others is to have a kind of inside out mentality. All of us have layers of people we know. So, there's our close friends and family, then our broader friend group and network, then there's all of our connections online plus their connections, and then, of course, everybody on the internet. I made sure to try every method I could possibly think of to reach my inner circles before I moved outward. So after I quit, the first 3 projects I got were simply from stories that I posted on my personal social media accounts, and I do not have an especially large reach. But that's how I came to design 3 websites for friends or friends of friends who I hadn't even realized had started their own businesses. But I didn't stop at the more obvious things like Instagram or Facebook. I tried all of these things and more, and I would encourage others to really exhaust every tactic you can think of, even if some of them feel silly or like a long shot. And one note about having this inside out client finding technique is that making your business so visible to those close to you can feel kind of vulnerable. I personally remember being terrified when I hit post on my first social media post about my new business because, like most people, I care more about what my friends and family think of me than strangers on Upwork or a second-degree connection on LinkedIn. But I quickly learned that part of committing to freelance is letting go of your ego. And during these first few months, I really had to learn to let people have their opinions about my decision to leave full time and let people think whatever they were going to think about my efforts to put myself out there. And one thing that helped was to remember that the spotlight effect is real. We all tend to overinflate the reality of how much people actually notice and care about what we're doing. Once I had really exhausted my inner circles, then I started to move outward. And for me, this meant things like becoming more active on LinkedIn, posting in different Slack communities, and starting a referral program with the clients who I had already worked with. I personally think that starting with the outer circles, for example, immediately trying to build an audience on a social media platform, can be tough and ultimately discouraging because those tend to be the methods that take a bit longer. I don't think that means that you shouldn't start, but I just wouldn't personally count on seeing consistent results for a while. Just my 2 cents. Once you do have a steady stream of work, in my experience, you can get a bit more creative and picky about how you want to build your pipeline. For example, is there a certain social media platform that you really love where you'd be excited to build an audience over time? Do you want to go all in on becoming a top Upwork profile? Maybe you would prefer to become really known within a very specific niche where you're kind of a go-to person. I have seen each of those work really well for people. I think it's kind of up to you. But the more you get your footing and realize where you have the most traction, I think the clearer your best path forward will become. I wouldn't overwhelm yourself by pursuing everything all at once. Just start small and work your way outward slowly and steadily. And keep in mind, of course, that generally moving outward means bigger projects and raising your prices. In the beginning, I was charging in the 3 to 5K range, and I was a lot more focused on getting in my reps and smoothing out my processes. But after my first couple of quarters, with more referrals and case studies, I was able to shift to more consistent projects in the 7 to 10K range. Looking back, the biggest mistake I personally made in the very beginning wasn't actually where I was looking for clients, it was how I was communicating with and following up with leads. Early on, anytime I got a new lead, I was so eager. I would send messages that basically screamed, "I'm so excited, let's work together, what's next?" And looking back, I now see why that didn't always land well. I don't think that showing excitement is a bad thing, but I do think you have to show excitement for the right things. So here's what I eventually figured out. When I followed up, my excitement needed to be about what mattered to the potential client. So their project, their goals, and the impact that I believed I could make for them. So instead of, "It was great to chat, excited to hopefully discuss next steps with you," try something more like, "Hearing about your work with blank was amazing. I would love to help bring specific goal to life with a website that truly reflects something about their company mission." Or, "I would be incredibly excited to craft a visually compelling, SEO optimized site that gets you closer to some milestone that you hopefully discussed in your intro call." Once I made this shift to centering them in my follow-ups and proposals, I noticed a huge difference. Clients would respond faster, conversions just felt like they were happening more naturally, and I started landing projects more consistently. I can honestly say that although it has not always been easy, I've never been happier or felt like I had more momentum with work. Having your own business is full of challenges, but at least for me, it's been more gratifying than any 9 to 5 I've ever had. So, if you're on the fence, keep in mind you don't have to take an all or nothing leap. You can start small with projects on the side and see how it feels to you. Remember that freelancing is not a one-way door. You can always go back, but if your journey is anything like mine, you will walk away with so many new skills, new connections, and a whole new perspective. Thanks.